everyone, and welcome back to the Business of Business
Morning. I'm
podcast, Two
good. How
Daughters
are
and Their
you?
Dad. I'm your host, Staci J Dempsey, and like always, thankfully, I have the one and only dad and one of the other daughters. Good morning and good afternoon to the both of you. How are you today?
Yep. Hello,
Cruising?
everybody. I'm doing well too. Very good.
Cruising with no bruising. So let's keep that moving. So
So far.
good morning and the afternoon to all of our viewers and our listeners. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, we're always so appreciative that you have decided to join us. And today we want to talk about this revolution, this idea, this thing that is here to stay, implementing changes and adapting to the hybrid remote revolution. And I think we've all been touched by this, whether being in an entrepreneurial situation where the team is saying, hey, we lived through COVID, we kind of got a piece of what working from home might look like. Coming back into the office, what does business look like when people are not coming back into the workplace, and just really just this whole change of what does work life look like now that we have been exposed to having to be at home for several months, had to be nimble and set up to work remotely, because I know between family, friends, neighbors, everybody is dealing with it in some capacity. And like we always say here on the podcast, change is inevitable and change hit us, and change is still going to constantly come. And so how can we adapt? What are the pros and cons, and what are we seeing here now that we can really use this to be mutually beneficial for all involved? And I know here in our office, and that's been something that we have feel like we've done a pretty good job embracing and finding the middle ground. And I know in my nonprofit life, we just worked through some things, as far as our office is concerned. So let's start it off. Dad, why don't you maybe share a little bit about your thoughts on maybe what we've done here in the office that's been helpful? And then Jennifer, I know, we've talked about you changing your salon around to where people are more in control of their schedules. So why don't you guys start us off? Dad, why don't we start off with you?
Well, it definitely is something that most businesses are dealing with in one way, shape, or form. That's for sure. We've talked about it before, back when COVID forced everybody out of the office and businesses scrambled to get people working remotely to keep their businesses up and running. Initially everybody hated it, because, as I've said, because their kids were home with them too. They were out of school, so they were trying to work and kids were home and they were trying to juggle so much, but then when the kids went back to school, then people were like, now I kind of do like it. And actually I like it a lot. Don't have the commuting, and there's a whole host of other reasons. And so it really has changed that paradigm, and businesses have embraced it differently. Some have embraced remote work. Others have said, nope, we're bringing everybody back and we're getting them back into the office. And so, the consequences, I think, on both sides, I mean, there are consequences on both sides of those decisions, but I know the ones that decide to bring everybody back, you know, attrition. There were some people saying, nope, I can go work over here, and work remotely. And so I know some of the vendors and companies that we work with, lost some pretty good talent because they made the stand of bringing people back to the office. So, it's a tough call, certainly. And I know, in our case, we tried to create, I guess, what you would call the hybrid model, where we do give still everybody the chance to work from home a day a week. And we bookend it, half the staff on Monday, half the staff on Friday, and then everybody here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So that seems to be working, and everybody seems comfortable with that. I mean, one of the positives, I think huge positives, for both businesses and employees, is the fact that now, let's say, you wake up, you're getting ready for work, and the kids come in and they got fevers and they're sick. And, wasn't that long ago, you had to call off from work because your kids were sick, and you had to take a personal time off, just to sit there and watch them sleep in their bed and give them some Tylenol every 4 hours. Now, employees say, kids are sick, I'm going to work from home today. And, so it's still productive. They don't have to take personal time off. And I think that's a win-win for everybody. So I do feel that there's been some real benefits from this, but there's no doubt as an employer, as an entrepreneur, depending on your business, if you're dealing with employees that potentially can do that role remotely, it's probably going to be a negotiating tool in hiring people. They're going to probably use that to say, this is what I would like. And we faced that recently too. We made what we thought was a real good hire, solid talent, and but ended up just not too many months later, they found a similar position and could do it remotely. And so we lost them, even though they weren't have they still had their 1 day, remote. So, but that's our decision to do it that way. So it wasn't like we're now going to make an accommodation, right? So we ended up losing. So it definitely is one of the challenges of the day. And then the last thing I'll say is also, though, because of remote work, it does broaden the talent pool too. So, for example, you always had to look within a certain radius of your business, a reasonable drive to the office, a reasonable commute. Where now, if you do have more of a remote model, now, honestly, you can hire someone in another state, that has strong skills and talent to do that role because, so it does open up a lot more opportunities for talent if you decide that remote is the right course of action, for your business or for at least some of the roles in your business.
Yeah, and to your point, Dad, there's also, realizing what is required of the job. And for some, for some businesses, the requirement for community and having people to, one of the challenges I hear from some of my friends that they work a lot, they work remote, and they're going back to a hybrid, was that something that they could have used to go walk into someone's office and get an answer on something in 5 minutes. Now it's setting up a Teams meeting and sending an email, and it's taking things so much longer. But there's also that, hey, I got this problem, I got this client on the phone, and having people around you to be like, okay, let's pull together and help this person out. That gets missed. And so I think one of the things that we've in setting up our hybrid model is that there is a need to be together at some point, to not only just for productivity, but to be around each other and feed off of each other and learn from one another and do training. So I think sometimes too, it's although someone would love to work fully remote, what's needed of inside the business to continue to push what we do forward. And I think that's the balancing act, is what does that really look like? And I know in my nonprofit life, we started really taking a look at the different positions that we have inside the office and getting feedback from prior employees and what clients need, and saying, hey, like, I really want to do this portion of coming into your nonprofit. We really need someone to be here like 6 or 7 o'clock at night. I need to do this in person. And we've just never, so now finding someone that's willing to do that means that they're not going to be in the office at 9 a.m. because they're going to be somewhere at 7 o'clock. Um, and then setting, what are those parameters? What are the expectations look like? How are we measuring all of this? And although it's, again, it's changed. So it's like, we're going to reevaluate this every 2 months, see where we're at. We're not going to let too much grass grow under our feet if this is not working. But if it does work, then we can start. I mean, that's great. And then we can start taking a look at other things. So sometimes it's just taking a look at what the business, what the clients are that you serve are also saying they need as well, and finding the right talent. I know I have a friend that she'd love to work closer to her home. But one of the things that holds her up is she's like, my job is so flexible. Like, my kid got sick. I had to be in there the day. I work in my own office. They didn't care that I set him up in a cot and we watched a tablet for 5 hours, and I could get all my work done. I mean, the flexibility, or being able, like you said, Dad, work from home today. You still got to get this project done. Don't have to take any personal time. She's like, I, I'm willing to take less money and drive farther, knowing that I have an employer that supports me in that way. And so, whereas before she'd be like, just gotta kind of do this the she would say, she's like, if I worked at this other place that I did 15 years ago, I would have been fired by now. I wouldn't even have that job because the way that my life is set up, they would have fired me by now.
Right.
So Jennifer, I know you've shared on the podcast kind of how you've changed some things. And so not really an opportunity to work
Yeah, I think,
remote in
a
your
part of my
business,
job or
but
anyone's job that
certainly
works in
maybe
a
a
service-based industry,
different way
in the
of
beauty
structuring
industry,
things. So why don't you
is
kind
to
of
understand what's
share that a
happening
little
out
bit?
in the world. And it's important for us to understand what consumers want and need. And so we saw what happened with COVID with more of those office jobs and maybe our ideal client that typically works 9 to 5 inside of an office. And so as people started working from home and having more flexibility, that gave us an opportunity to change as well and really be able to make sure we can service the needs of what our consumers want. And with our clients being able to work from home or work remote, we had built a table in our salon because we want to encourage our clients to come and bring their laptop and be on a work call while their hair is processing and be able to kind of do all of those things in the comfort of our salon. And so that was really important. So that changed a lot for us where it was, not that many years ago that, everybody kind of worked 9 to 5. So people had needed to come after work to get their hair done or come on the weekends. And so that has changed so much, I think, in a positive way for service based industries. But, you know, understanding that that's going on and then being able to make sure that we create that environment for our clients to love. When my client has their earpiece on and they're on a Teams meeting and I'm just foiling away, obviously there's no conversation, but really just helping them be able to get through their workday and get their hair done. And then they have the weekend to themselves and they're not spending it in the salon. Adapting in that way for us is really important. I think, one thing that I've learned over 9 years of being an entrepreneur and understanding what's going on in the world is that most of the time that's what people want is freedom or flexibility. And so when I operated a certain way inside of my business, I was unable to give people freedom, right? For example, when we were accepting walk-ins, it's like I needed stylists here every hour the salon was open for walk-ins. But the moment that I said, you know what, we're not a walk-in salon anymore. We don't promote it. We're not same day stylists. That just taking that away gave my stylist the freedom to say, you can come when you have clients and you can leave when you don't. And I don't have an expectation for you just because you're scheduled 10 to 8. You don't have to be here from 10 to 8 all day long. And so giving my employees freedom in that way really does help um, avoid burnout. It helps um, people to feel like they are in control of their schedule and can come and go as they please. So it really has worked out in a really positive way and odd for me because when I first started almost 20 years ago, it was like, no, you got to be you have to be at work every day, start to finish, clock in, clock out type of mindset. And things have changed so much, which I think is positive. So yes, we can't work from home, but hairdressers have definitely received a lot of freedom since you guys, the people that are, offering hybrid and work from home and all these different things, have really benefited our salon and our industry and just makes everyone happier because I'm getting too old to work at 6 o'clock at night, guys. Come on. I need, I need you guys to offer this. So I can do hair at 10 a.m. Everybody's working, everybody's happy, and I want to go home by 6 too. It all has been beneficial in my way. But I will share with other entrepreneurs, if I was closed off to that idea, if I was afraid of change and accepting what was really happening, then this would have never worked. So again, I think it's important to kind of obviously have your culture in place, but embracing what employees really want because that just makes for happier employees. And I was just watching a video the other day that a woman was talking about the only thing I care about is I want to go to my kids' events. I will work later, I will come in earlier, but I'm going to every field day. I'm going to the classroom parties. I'm doing this. parents don't want to miss out on things that kids have going on. So if you give them a little bit of
Yeah.
flexibility, I think that the business and you will benefit in the long run for letting them go to their kids' field day. It all kind of works out, and I love the way that we're moving forward in this direction.
It's so funny because yesterday I was at the kids' field day and I'm texting with dad because we have an appointment, and I fully enjoyed my time. The kids kept saying, "This is the best day ever." Like, watching them do these little games and stuff. It really was a good time. But I was like, listen, I'm going to meet you at the front. I'm going to sign you out because mommy has to go home. I have a call will pop up. I have work. I'm going to take you to walk. Not that I was rushing them, but like, hey, this is what comes next. Like, mommy spent the morning here. We're going to go home. We'll set you up with lunch. I got a call will pop up because I have to work, in the afternoon. And so, it all worked out where I could still like, okay, you're going on your call will pop up. Yeah, because mommy has to work and, do what I need to do. But I was able to be fully present at their field day and then be like, all right, now it's time to shift gears and have this big appointment today that I'm really excited about. So, but yeah, like you were saying, Jen, I mean, I think fully just embracing what's happening. What are people really wanting? The flexibility and whatever it is that they want to incorporate into their lives that 10 years ago was really just kind of off the books. It's not a part of the game plan. People are like, yeah, if I can, I'm willing to do sacrifice in this area so that I can go do these things. And most, I think, me being a millennial, I'm like, yeah, I want you to go to your kids' field day. Yeah, because that's important, like that would be important to me. So what's the exchange here? I think people like that there's that flexibility and like I said, even my friend, like she appreciates that. She's like, I know that's they don't have to do that. And so it's really the way of the world. So think Jen's internet just went out, but that's okay. So, Dad, what would be, some maybe pointers for that you could give some entrepreneurs that, maybe they have teammates coming to them saying, you know, we want to be more creative, we want to think outside the box. What could somebody say that if they had some staff coming to them, what could be some questions they ask their staff, like, well, how do you feel like what are tasks that you feel like you could get done under a hybrid model or like things like that, like what would be the kind of the conversation starters if a service industry really hasn't done this before?
Well, that's exactly what the approach you should be taking with your team is, and whether that's a team of one or two. I mean, yeah, we have to understand. I mean, the smaller your team, maybe the less flexibility you can have when it comes to that, depending on your business. The more people you have, like in our case, I mean, we have a large enough staff that we've always got someone here in the office. There's always, when we say Mondays, well, we have half the team. Well, that other half, can fill in for those who are working remotely if we need them to in the office. And same thing on Friday, where, with a smaller group, maybe one or two, well, now you may not have that, so that, that could be an issue when you really want and need someone in the office, if you have walk-ins. Now, you can always start to clearly communicate to your clients that we're in the office fully these days and we're open this day but we're remote. And I think most people in today's world wouldn't leave your business just because of that, as long as you're attentive in every other way. And now in our case, we have an office. It's very prominent, high traffic area, very convenient to many of our clients. So we do get a fair amount of people coming into our office for, you know, to get service work, to pay bills, pay their premiums, to have meetings, so, but not every agent or every business is like that. Some just don't rarely have anybody come in because, again, more and more people are used to dealing, through technology. So, but I mean, I don't really want to maybe get overly specific with the list of questions, but the first thing you would want to make sure is everybody understands your model. And then how can we, if your team's coming to you and saying, we really would like to have, some work from home time, and then just be open to it, and just try to come up with maybe something that, both sides can, feel good about. And so, but not just, shut it down like, we're back in the office and that's that. But again, if that's what your business requires, that someone's there and, then you got to be there, so then you'd have to make that decision as an employee, whether or not you want to go look for something else that might provide that. Um, but it's every business is a little different. It depends on the type of business, so, but it can work.
Yeah.
It can work for both sides, if you're just open to, working with a model of some kind. So, just like in Jen's case, your mindset would be, well, it's a hair salon. You have to, you're not going to make any money sitting at home. But in her case, well, since we are not considered a walk-in salon, there's no reason to, sit here, if you're not busy, in case somebody happens to call, at the last minute and say, can I get in? But I guess that's always a possibility, but, there's really no reason. So, that kind of can produce, a good atmosphere for your team. So I'm just being creative, I think, is the biggest. But if you have an employee that's coming in and basically demanding, I'm going to work, I need to work remote. Well, then I guess your first question is, well, then are you saying it's that or nothing, or are you willing to talk about it and see if we can come up? Because if it's that or nothing, then it's probably nothing,
Right.
so, but if you're saying, I'm willing to, work, see if we can work something out that I can get some remote work, then be open to it, be open to it and see if you can work through it. And, because you'll probably have a very loyal person if they see you're meeting them at, somewhere on that spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Dad, because as we were changing some things around in my nonprofit world, we were trying to do our best to manage expectations in one role. We started getting questions from other roles, and one of the questions was, "Oh, well, looks like she gets to make her own schedule, so I'm only going to work Monday. I'm only going to work Monday through Thursday now." And it's like, okay, well, the job requires a Monday through Friday. And so is this your 2 week? What I said to them was, is this your 2 week notice, or is this you trying to think outside coming to me to try to brainstorm about how we could make that work? I mean, at the end of the day, the job requires certain things and that's what we have to accomplish. So if it doesn't work for that employee, then we'll have to find someone else. But thankfully, she was willing to brainstorm. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just most people I feel like want to find a middle ground, because if not, then they would have just quit. So if people aren't just doing that, then you probably have somebody that is definitely willing to want to brainstorm and think about things a little bit differently. But the reality of it is that this is all here. And, I think at least what I've noticed is that although I wish we had never gone through that COVID mess in general, I think what did get produced for businesses that embraced it, and at least for us, is that, something that maybe we would have taken a little longer to maybe get on the bandwagon about. It has created, I think, a much higher morale, high energy group of teammates here that realize that like this is working. I don't want to say not mess it up, but like we have a good thing going here. And this is, it provides more of a work balance life for people. Um, and that's just, an overall just better feeling when we are here together, and more importantly, when challenges come up, because we are still having meetings where like, hey, this is what's going on, and we need everybody in it to win it. And I think that, we've been really fortunate that we've always had a team that's like, all right, this is tough right now. We'll get through it. And like we've always gotten, figured things out in the business side. And I think that's really important. And I'm glad that, that at least Dad had the vision to say, well, I was just going to do it. If it doesn't work, then we'll figure that out. But where I'm like, I don't know what's about to happen. So that's why Jack's the man. That's why Jack's the boss. Jack's the man, not Jack the fish. So anyway,
Well, I think the other real quick thing, Stacy, just not to belabor it, but I think one of the big fears, from an employer perspective, is in that remote role. I mean, are you really getting, you know, are you really getting everybody's full attention? Depending upon kind of what home means to people, right? So, I mean, if their kids are in daycare and while they're in the office, but then you're working remotely, so you don't put them in daycare. Well, how much attention, are you giving work compared to? And I don't know if there might be some metrics out there with the technology to kind of see, and monitor that. But, I guess in my mind, you know, if work is slacking, it'll start to manifest somewhere, and, rather than try to rack your brain on how to micromanage those remote days, just say, listen, I trust you until you give me a reason not to, so I trust you're going to give me, a good day's work while you're working from home. I'm not going to sit there and, figure out a way to kind of watch, how many hours you logged onto the computer or this or that. But if we see that work is some things are starting to not, meet our expectations or meet, at least the expectations that you have demonstrated in the past, then we might have to have a conversation about it. But I just think that's the easiest way to approach that rather than, just being overly concerned about, micromanaging that piece of it.
yeah,
Another thought that
well
comes to
said.
mind for me is when you're making major changes inside of your business, and let's just take this as an example. You're taking someone is going to work hybrid on Fridays. I do feel passionate about it really is the business and the owner's job to tell your customers or your clients on how to do business with you, right? So, especially if you're making big changes. So, for example, when I made changes inside of my business, I no longer felt a need to have someone at my front desk that I was paying. So, because again, I'm not doing walk-ins, I'm not doing all these things. So I wanted to remove the front desk kind of old school hairdresser mentality because that's not what I'm about anymore. And I really drive people or our clients to book online. That's what we want. I don't want the phone ringing all day. I don't want to have to pay someone to answer my phones. I want our clients to book online and use our technology or message us on Instagram. Or, I mean, I even know businesses that have a texting phone number, right? And think about your customers too is like, do we really want to pick up the phone and call and have to call while I'm working and say, hey, mo- most people in 2025 don't want to do that, right? So it can be very scary to say, oh, what if I don't have someone there to answer my phones? Am I going to lose business? I really do think it's our job to teach people how to do business with us. So if you have someone working in your business that now is going to work from home on Fridays, well, that employee needs to make sure that the clients that they work with, they're communicating that. Hey, listen, you can reach me at the office Monday through Thursday. If you need me on Friday, I'm still here. I'm just not going to physically be in the office. Here's how you can contact me. Please feel free to I'm still here for you. That's their responsibility to do that. So we can
Yeah,
still have, these excellent customer service expectations inside of our business. They just might look different. So if you're looking to make any type of big changes inside of your business and how people do business with you, you have to tell people how to do that. And they might not get it the first time, but once you kind of start putting it out there, sending emails, talking about it on social media, hey, listen, I want you to go to our website and book with us, then they will start to do that. So you kind of implement big changes, big technology. Um, those things happen inside of your business, but it's our job to teach people how to do that. And one other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking, Dad, is I've really adapted this mindset of, if I can't trust you, then you shouldn't be working for me. It's really that simple. I do not micromanage. I hate it. It's just not my thing. So it's very simple. If I don't trust you, then you just don't work for me. And why would you want someone working in your business that you don't trust or that you have to micromanage? Might be time to replace them. So sometimes we just make these things harder than they have to be. It's very simple.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
it's true. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Good conversation today, guys. So thank you guys so much. We also want to remind our viewers and our listeners, we are coming up on the 6-month check-in. Okay. 6 months is behind us. 6 months is in front of us. So let's start taking a look at where are we at in our plan? Who do we need to meet with? Who do we need to make appointments with? And where are we at in our business? Where do we need to change course? What's working? What's not? Now's the time to set aside that time and figure all that out. Take a look at things, look at your numbers, pull your reports, email your people, your lawyer, your tax accountant, your accountant, your insurance people, all of your people who's ever on your team. Let's do a roundup. Anything I need to know, anything I need to be aware of. I'm taking a look at my things. Give me your opinion. So now is the time to start taking a look at all of those things, because if there needs to be course correction, better to do it halfway through the year than at the end of the year, because we know what November, December, January looks like. We're rolling out, we're ending one year, try to have momentum into the next year. So let's do it now. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate each and every one of you. We will see you guys in our next episode. Bye-bye.